Anyway, senior year of high school, I got a wee bit over my head on some recreational activity debts, and spring semester, high school, Beaumont, Texas, this this guy, he'd been stringing me along the entire spring semester for drugs. I told him I had college money coming when I graduated, which was a crock. Anyway, he sort of wised up after a while, so he cornered me one Friday afternoon after school, and he asked me for the money. I told him I could come up with it by Monday, which was also a crock, and I set my alarm Friday night about 2 in the morning, and I had a backpack packed. I went to my parents' bedroom, ripped off my dad's wallet and all of his credit cards, and the $400 that my dad always had stashed in the sock drawers for emergencies. And you know, I figured this was an emergency. And of course, this wasn't enough money to pay off the drug debts. But basically, long story short, I split and wound up about a week later in L.A. And the $400 got me to L.A. and money ran out fairly quickly, of course. And I started with the you start with the best. You start with American Express, and so I maxed every one of those. I have no idea why these didn't get canceled, but they didn't, for which I was truly grateful. And I maxed the Amex, worked my way down to the Visa and Discover all the way down. Eventually, I'd maxed them all. I'm down to the gas credit cards, right? Anyway, the gas cards eventually gets maxed. I'm living on the street in Los Angeles, along with everybody else and their dog. And eventually, I started getting sick, which is a bad career move if you live on the street. You don't want to get sick. If you get sick when you live on the street, you start getting beat up a lot, and then you get sicker. I decided I needed to do something, so, I decided that I'm going to get well, right? So I used to run some weed for this guy, and, not a lot, just a little bit, but I convinced this guy there was a bunch of frat boys up in Westwood that wanted to have a party, and so he fronted me a whole bunch of weed. And of course, I didn't go to Westwood, I go to South Central, and I go down to South Central, got lost real quick, sold just enough of the weed to give me a little spending money, checked into a cheap motel. I mean, I had a plan here. I figured, I'm going to smoke weed, drink beer, eat Twinkies, until I get well. Anyway, I've checked into this cheap motel. I had a few beers, a few joints, a few Twinkies, and I'm not feeling a whole lot of pain, so I'm sleeping in this cheap motel in the middle of South Central. This guy busts into my room, and he's like playing a tune all over my face. Needless to say, when I could open my eyes the next morning, this guy's gone, the junk food's gone, the money's gone, the beer's gone, everything's gone. The weed, actually, the weed was not gone. I hid all this weed in a pillowcase. Of course, I'm kicked out of the motel because the room is trashed. So I'm back on the street. This time I'm in South Central. My face is swollen to about here. I'm standing in the middle of South Central with a pillowcase full of marijuana. At which point I came to a conclusion. At that point, I decided, Los Angeles is not a healthy place. So I figured, I'll go to San Francisco. And so I'm out on I-5. I got my thumb stuck up in the air. I'm trying to get rides on I-5, which was virtually impossible. I was very scary looking. I would have not picked me up. This hippie, he agrees to give me a ride. Well, first I tell him I'm going to San Francisco, first off. And the hippie, he tells me he's going to Key West. And I figured, hey, close enough. And so he agrees to give me a ride to Florida with him as long as I share my weed with him, which made for a very adventurous ride to Florida. So we're on this, we're in this VW bus. We're going the southern route because it's not going over the mountains. And we're on I-10, and this bus goes maybe 45 miles an hour max. So we're going down the road, we get bored, we start talking, this hippie and I, comparing notes, that sort of thing. This guy, he tells me all this awful stuff about his dad and his parents, So I'm trying to keep up with the guy, right? I'm not going to let him top me. So I start thinking about it. The worst thing I could think to tell this guy about my parents, that was true, was like, it's like, golly gee, Beaver, my dad was extremely gullible. I don't know. It didn't sound so bad, you know. So I made up all these lies about my dad. I was like, whoa, man, you think your dad's bad, man? My dad used to, like, beat me, man, with 2x4s, man, with nails in them. I made up all these lies, you know, about my dad. You know, I had not thought about my dad for like, I'd been out there probably 2 or 3 years. Actually, I hadn't thought about my parents since the credit cards maxed. And I don't know, I just got to thinking about my mom, my dad. I don't know. I-10 goes right through Beaumont, and I don't know, I get this hippie, he drops me off in Beaumont, and he toodles on down the road. The first thing I do when I get to town is I go to the park. There's a park about 2 miles from my folks' house. I used to get blitzed there in high school with a whole bunch of guys. So at about 6 o'clock at night, I've had a couple of joints, got a little bit of weed left in the bottom of the pillowcase, and I don't know, it was about 6:30 at night. I figured, hey, you know, maybe I'll just like, you know, like walk over to my folks' house, you know, like take a look at the house, right? I got no plan. I don't know what I'm doing. So I get over to my folks' house. It's probably 7:30 at night by the time I get there. I'm walking up to my folks' house. They live on a dead-end street, a cul-de-sac. They're 6 up from the end. I'm walking down the street. I'm looking at my folks' house. And something ain't clicking here. And I don't think it's just the drug synapse problem here. The house is painted the wrong color. There's no cars in the driveway, which there ought to be at this time of night. There's no lights on in the house, which there should be at this time of night. There's no name on the mailbox, which there always was at my folks' house. I'm looking at this house. I'm thinking, okay, what? Maybe they moved, you know? I don't know. So I sneak up on the mailbox, right? And I figure, you know, I'll look in the mailbox and see who actually lives in the house now, right? So I sort of sneak up on the mailbox. It's pitch black at this point, middle of the winter. I open the mailbox door, and I pull the mail out. There's 2 bills in the mailbox for my dad. There's a bill and a magazine in the mailbox for my mom. And there's a note in the mailbox for me. It's taped to the inside of this mailbox door with masking tape around the edges of it. You know, the masking tape's kind of curling up like it does when it gets hot. And the note's written in ink, but it's been rained on. It's kind of faded. The note says, welcome home. There's sandwich stuff in the fridge. There's clean sheets on your bed. The key to the back door is in the same old hiding place. We missed you, Mom and Dad. So, I untaped the note, stuck it in my pocket, and don't ask me why I did that. I have no idea. A souvenir, I don't know. I stick it in my pocket, and I go down to the end of the street. I'm not going in the house without my folks being in the house first. No way, Jose. I go in there without them being in there first. Technically, that's breaking and entering. You know, I did learn a little law in Los Angeles. They're going to be in the house before I go in. So I go to the end of the street to the Green's house, the neighbors. The Green's house is way back from the street. You can't even see their house from the road. But right up by the street, the Greens have these azalea bushes, right? I mean, these are like mongo, like family of 6 could live in these bushes, right? So I crawl in the azaleas. I got this ratty raincoat I got at the Goodwill for $2. And I got it wrapped around me because it's freezing cold outside. So I've got this thing around me, and I'm kind of doing like this, right? Like peeking through the azaleas, watching my folks' house. My dad pulls up in the driveway, gets out of his Buick. He goes over to the mailbox to get the mail, right? No sweat. He's opening the mailbox door, my dad, pulls out the mail. He's closing the mailbox door. All of a sudden, he's like staring at this mailbox door where the note had been taped. I mean, he looks at the door. He looks all around the mailbox. He looks toward the house. He looks at the door, and he's finally, he's like, wham! Slams the mailbox door,